So here we are on the fifth Sunday of Lent, and we're plunked down in the middle of a desert scene as we're waiting for the snow to melt and the ground to thaw. I got thinking, boy, the Bible would have been really different if, the people that it was talking about were from New England or Scandinavia. We would have had a whole different set of metaphors, right? So, in a strange sort of way, though, right? The desert place, the dry, barren place, and the cold, gray, frozen place of our winter are in some way both like Ezekiel's valley of the dry bones. Both seem devoid of life. Both can feel like places of stagnancy, death, emptiness. So, is there anyone here who likes horror movies? All right, there's a couple. Okay, all right. It always surprises me. I'm not one of those people, and I know sometimes when we take the kids to like the haunted graveyards, and they're talking the entire way there about how they love these horror movies, and I think, how do they do that? I'm not one of those people, so this valley of dry bones, it seems hard for me. I'd rather turn and get the heck out of here. But the truth is, we are human, and there is suffering. On the labyrinth of life, we just are bound to find ourselves in these dry bone places. When that special relationship doesn't feel quite as alive as it used to, or when we don't feel like we fit in anywhere, when our bodies change, when the world as we thought we knew it no longer holds. So every human has these experiences, even the people that we admire and hold high on a pedestal. I was at a meeting recently on a board that I sit on, and I love all of the people that are on this board. I hold them in such high esteem, and they kind of are those kind of people that you think, oh, there's nothing wrong in their lives. They're all fantastic. And during the course of this meeting, nearly every single one of them shared that they weren't quite sure where they fit into this organization. They weren't quite sure whether they were still valued. And I found it really humbling because we are all in that place. All of us. Even Mother Teresa, I'm sure some of you read that, years ago, a Time magazine article came out that said, despite the amazing work she was doing around the world over her entire lifetime, she had long years of time when she wasn't even sure that God existed. And I was like, phew, okay, all right, everybody is human. And so we all have these dry places. We don't always share them with each other, but we do all have them. And they kind of feel like you're wandering in the wilderness, right? You're just lost, you're kind of hopeless, you're unsure where the next water is going to be. And it can make you feel like an exile, like a stranger. So Ezekiel knew about this being a stranger in a strange land. Ezekiel and his people had been kicked out of their home, their country. They are living in a new place that they're unfamiliar with. Their most sacred pillar, the temple, has been destroyed. There's no community anymore like we have here. There's no community. It's been dispersed. And so there's no rituals and no traditions to hold on to. So he got it. Everything was shattered. Everything was turned upside down. The interesting thing is that before Ezekiel's people were exiled, they had this relationship with God where they thought that, okay, if we do this, this, and this, then God will protect us. So if we make sure that things are very pure, God will protect us. If we make sure we do the right kind of sacrifices in the right way, God will protect us. But now they find themselves in a situation where there must be something wrong with that way of thinking because they are in exile without their sacred building and without their community. So I wonder, have you ever felt like a stranger in your own skin? Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own family? Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own land? most of us and so it helps us to understand how Ezekiel and his whole people must have been feeling and say, our bones are dried up and our hope is lost. We are cut off completely. Fast forward 2,600 years. Do we ever still send up this cry? Maybe it's just me, but I hear it a lot. I say it, right? It's useless. It's a mess. Our hope is lost. Or I don't know what to do. I'm not sure how to do it. There's nothing to be done. I can't do enough. Do you hear all that? Me, mine. I can't do enough, as if it was all up to us. And yet, in this morning's passage, God, like a mother calling out to her lost children, says, I will cause breath. I, God, will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. Come home to me, calls Mother God. Come home to your true self. Come home where there is life, she calls. So if you are a mother, or you have experienced a mothering type of presence in your life, you know what that fierce mother love. See, kids looking at mothers now. Okay, well, there's this fierce mother love. It's very special. Mothers don't give up. So my son Ben was home last week from college, and I did everything in my powers to make sure he stayed home. I made him every last one of his favorite meals, and I walked in the woods with him so I could learn about what he's learning about, and we invited his friends over, and I knew that he had to go back, but I will welcome him every time he wants to come home. I will try to get him to come home, no matter how many shepherd pies I need to make. A mothering kind of love is inexhaustible. It's unconditional. And so that is that interesting rhythm we see. We wander off a little bit into these dry bone places, and God calls us back to our center again and again. So I was reminded as I was preparing for this week's message, a great professor of mine at Hartford Seminary named Kelton Cobb, wonderful theologian, great teacher. He pointed this out, that there is throughout the entire Bible this thread of being lost and being called back. You know, think about it. So we have Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden, so they're out wandering. Then you have the Israelites leaving Egypt and wandering in the desert for 40 years. Now in this story we have Ezekiel and his people who have been forced out of their country. The prodigal son goes off to figure out the meaning of life. But always, always, always God is calling back and back and back again. Of course, Ezekiel's people wanted to return home. They wanted to return home to their community, to their group of people. They wanted to return home to their land, the place that they were familiar with. They wanted to return home to be in relationship with God. And so do we, right? In these dry places, we are just like, oh my goodness, when am I ever going to go home to that love? But in today's story, it doesn't happen right away. What happens in today's story? First part. Anybody?
It was a long passage.
It was a long passage. All right, okay. So at the beginning, right, Ezekiel prophesies, but the bones come together and the skin comes on, but there is not life yet. And it reminds me how we often walk through life. I mean, you can even, if you walk down the street or go to the airport, often you'll see people and they're either rushing through life so fast that you wonder, well, how do they do that? Or they just don't look full of life. You know, we can get really into our routines and trying to check off certain boxes and to meeting certain expectations that we think people have or society has. that we don't spend our time centering ourselves in what matters, in love and compassion and God. These are dry bone places. So we can understand wanting to get back, like Ezekiel. So I would ask you in these coming days, what are the dry bone places in your life? Where are they? What do they look like? Are there some things you could let go of? There are some things that when they die, that's okay. Some ways of thinking, some old habits that you don't need anymore. You can get rid of them. That's okay. And then, are there other places in your life, though, where you want new life breathed in? Where you hope for that? Just notice what those places are. Now, like I said, the bones came together, the skin came on, but there was no life until spirit was breathed in, and then there was life. And I love this image because it is an old image in the Hebrew Bible. Shekinah is the God spirit, the female characteristics of God's spirit. She was the pillar of cloud and fire, which was always going before the people of Israel. And the important part is, Shekinah is based on the word Mishkan. And Mishkan means to dwell. So this is not a God out there. This is not a God in the temple, necessarily. This is a God who dwells with the people. And here, look at what's happened. This God loves so deeply that God's self is breathed into humans, into people, so that there is a piece of sacred in us. So it's a really big turning point. It's a really big shift. Those folks in Ezekiel's society, in his culture, they had this transactional kind of relationship with God, right? So it was, if you do this, I'll do that kind of thing, which almost objectifies the parts, the people, like a contract. And this shift is to this God, this spirit, who has unconditional love, who loves so much that that God becomes part of us. And that shifts your entire way of thinking. And that shift can change your entire life. So imagine if we could understand our bodies, our minds, our spirits as having something of the divine in us. How would that change the way we treat ourselves? And imagine if we could see the sacred in every person whose life touches ours. How would that change our relationships? You know, I have recently been doing a lot of reading on Native American spirituality, and one of the neat things that they do is before they even jump into a conversation with someone, they mentally say thank you to that person. They mentally ask, may I speak with you? May I be in your presence? Maybe I'm the only one, but I tend to just jump right into a conversation. Yes, I am part extrovert. But what a difference it would make if before jumping into a conversation or any kind of interaction, we were to say mentally, thank you for being you. I see the sacred in you. May I be in conversation with you? That is a loving relationship, a covenantal relationship, not an objectification. And then so we take that the next step further. If you can also imagine seeing the sacred and touching the land and seeing its sacredness, touching your plants and your pets and your friends in this caring way that God touches us, how might it be different? So, would we we become reconnected? Would we become re-energized? Would we remember who we really are? Where we really come from? Could we return to God, that sacred mystery, who's always calling us back? And how cool would it be if we're like all out there wandering in our desert and dry places, and we're moving toward this center, and we start to see each other as sacred beings in the meantime as we make this movement towards wholeness. Seems quite beautiful to me. O my people, I will put my spirit within you, and you shall live, and I will place you on your own soil. Then you shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken and will act. God will bring us back. Spirit always does. I'd like to finish up today with a poem by Oriah Mountain Dreamer entitled The Call. I have heard it all my life, a voice calling a name I recognized as my own. Sometimes it comes as a soft-bellied whisper. Sometimes it holds an edge of urgency. But always it says, "Wake up, my love. You are walking asleep. There's no safety in that. Remember what you are, and let this knowing take you home to the beloved with every breath. Hold tenderly who you are, and let a deeper knowing color the shape of your humanness. There is nowhere to go. What you are looking for is right here. Open the fist clenched in wanting and see what you already hold in your hand. There is no waiting for something to happen, no point in the future to get to. All you have ever longed for is here in this moment right now. You are wearing yourself out with all this searching. Come home and rest. How much longer can you live like this? Your hungry spirit is gaunt, your heart stumbles. All this trying, give it up. Let yourself be one of the God-mad, faithful only to the beauty you are. Let the lover pull you to your feet and hold you close, dancing even when fear urges you to sit this one out. Remember, there is one word you are here to say with your whole being. When it finds you, give your life to it. Don't be tight-lipped and stingy. Spend yourself completely on the saying, be one word in this great love poem we are writing together.